We are going to talk about how the final trial ended up wrapping up for my custody case and some of the shocking moments that came out of the discovery and some of the revelations made during our court hearing. It's crazy. There was a couple of things that were revealed during the deliberation that truly compromised my case even more. So let's get started. So from May to July, we were going back and forth with the allocation judgment. Then we were up for trial in July of 2023. This trial was in person, and I will never forget the date. It was July 13th of 2023. Is that right? Yes. July 13th of 2023, and it was at 10 a.m. And we were there pretty much all day for the most part. It was so long. So a couple of days before the trial actually started, my attorney and I had a meeting, and she had to basically prepare me for what this looked like, right? So she also wanted to understand how I interviewed. She had some questions for me. The opposing party would likely have some questions for me as well. So she wanted to understand how I performed and then kind of help me with how I was answering the questions. So she wasn't necessarily coaching me per se, but she also wanted to make sure that I kept my answers direct and to the point, because when I'm nervous, like a lot of people, I get really long-winded, I fidget, I can stutter sometimes, and you were trying to make sure that I was comfortable and understood what was to be expected. Of course, we never knew what was going to be asked of me because unfortunately the other side gave us nothing. So the good thing about my attorney is that she was very forthcoming, right? She would share the question. She would let everybody know on the opposing side what's to come. The opposing side did absolutely nothing. They gave us nothing. They didn't follow up with the motions. They were dragging along. So essentially there was nothing for them to work with, or nothing for us to work with regards to that. So y'all, what I will say is that my attorney prepared like no other. We had an extensive evidence binder that you will see over here. Like, I can't curse, right? So thorough AF, like got every piece of evidence that I discussed. I also provided her with some additional context. Everything was in this big A binder, like desk binder, like it was huge. Quite intimidating, right? I think when we got to court, people were like, whoa, what is that, right? It was our evidence binder. And I really appreciate that she was just that thorough, because I'm like that. I'm a type A and I want all the details. So she was really good on that part. And the evidence binder had like 100 pages or so. Like, was so thorough. So in the hearing, what was up was the motion for temporary parenting time, upward child support, and then we still had this domestic violence, anger management lingering, right? So I felt like there was a lot of noise in the background as to exactly what we were up against, but I never forgot that because I knew the reason why I was here. So I always was constantly reminding, like my attorney, to remind the opposing side, like Paramour came to me with this information about domestic violence and anger and all these things that were exhibited around my child. This is why we're here. Because if it wasn't for her coming to me, we would not be in court. We would probably be going through the same parenting schedule and status quo that we had prior. This is why we're here. And now it's a good time to memorialize everything else that we need to address with regards to the parenting. So that was really annoying, but that was what we were up against when it came to the trial. So a little bit about who was at the trial. Of course, we got the judge, the clerk, my attorney, his attorney, me, him. Then we had Dodo Bird / the paramour. I think I like the nickname Dodo Bird better, but okay, we had the paramour. Then also my very good friend, my sorority sister, line sister, my bestie boo, my son's godmother was also there as a means of support, and also should there need to be a witness for anything parenting related from a third party, another party's perspective on my end, she was there to fill in that gap. So those were all the people that were there. So guess who didn't show up? I'm gonna give you like seconds. If you've been following my story with the playlist, the GAL, the guardian ad litem, did not show up. for the trial. It was so embarrassing for him not to be there because my attorney was like, where are you? His attorney was like, is he? The judge was like, did he not know that we had up for status? I had to have known we were up for status. We were all in the know of what was going on. He was not there, okay? We were there for 4 hours. The GAL showed up at the very tail end of that, like a minute where he was no longer needed. So he was fighting for his desires. I was fighting for my desires. And I will break down in another video, like things that you want to consider when you are drafting an allocation judgment. I think I mentioned that I would do that in one of the other videos, but I am just reiterating that that's coming because I think a lot of people are not clear on how specific they should be when it comes to their parenting plan, especially when you have two parents that are not good at communicating together or the situation is just tense, all that stuff. So I will get that together. So just to be clear on some of the things that I was stuck on with regard to the allocation judgment and that my ex-husband was fighting me on was my ability to travel abroad with my son. So for those of you that may or may not know, I'm Panamanian and I have family in Panama and I have strong ties to my parents' native country, right? So I was born here in the US. My parents were immigrants to Panama. So it is extremely important for my son to be bilingual, to be able to visit the country and understand his culture from that perspective. I grew up going to summers in Panama. I grew up enjoying the country in that way, and I want my son to be able to have that. But my ex-husband was fighting against that. The other thing that is who gets the school district. So the school district was important to me because I literally purchased my house in the neighborhood that I purchased in because the school district is a good school district. Like, there are a lot of good schools around here. And when we were married, we were talking about potentially buying a home in the same neighborhood, right? So I kind of stuck with the script in the sense of purchasing or moving into an area where I knew I would not have to worry so much about whether or not my son was going to a good school. So he was fighting against that because my take on it is that he had some conveniences that were more so in line with, his household, right? So homegirl, well, I don't want to call her homegirl. So paramour's daughter, who she had from a previous relationship, was going to school, a particular school closer to them. My thought is that he was trying to make it convenient for him in having my school go to the same school potentially that she was going to. And I was like, nah, this is not about your convenience. It's about what's best for our son. Just generally, if you take the school, that magnet school or the classical school that he lives right around, there are no other schools that are good around his neighborhood. So that was not in the best interest of my child because the likelihood of the school district matching a better choice for my son's in a good education is in my neighborhood versus his neighborhood. So that was the fight there. And then the other big thing was who gets to be alone with our son or approved caregiver list. That was important to me because for, let's say, about a year plus of me being into the case and maybe even more, right? Entering the case, I didn't know who was taking care of my son. It was never disclosed to me. And I always felt like it was necessary that if he was not going to be caring for our son and I was not going to be caring for our son or something overnight or anything like that, we as parents should know, because if anything were to happen to our child, we should be able to say, oh, I know they were with so-and-so. Let me call them or let me figure out what happened. I would hate for anything to happen to my child or me, and my ex doesn't know anything about who to call, what questions to ask, or anything like that. But he thought otherwise. He was like, well, when he's with me, it's none of your business what goes on. It's not about being my business. It's about who is caring for my child. But whatever. That was another thing he was fighting for. We also needed to set a timeline for the back child support. So that was still an issue, but then we couldn't really address the child support because the numbers are what they are, but he also was not providing all of the documents. So they were being given last minute. So up until that point in July of 2023, we still hadn't received everything. And we got maybe a pay stub, but then he was still missing an income tax statement and all this stuff. And like, we're already a year into our case. Why are you not giving these documents? So clearly, from an asset perspective, he was trying to hide some things. And lo and behold, that delayed this particular trial date. So when we were in trial, first of all, your girl came ready. I was dressed, okay? I always make sure that I just look the part. I just always want to make sure that I look the part. The paramour looked like Frederick Douglass. I'm talking about homegirl did not gather herself, but I think I understand why now that I'm reflecting, and the reason why will come out in this video as well. So there was a moment in which I think his attorney was definitely being slick, and we didn't really catch on to it until like after the fact of, you know, the hearing or whatever. So his attorney requested that he hold off on doing testimony and going full blown on trial and swearing people in and all of that stuff, and allow for an opportunity for him and my attorney to talk through the outstanding items with the judge instead of going to trial, right? So essentially, it would be my attorney, his attorney, the judge, and the judge's clerk in the chamber while we're outside just kind of waiting to see what's negotiated. Of course, my attorney knows what I'm asking for. His attorney knows what he's asking for. And that was what he was requesting of the judge. I think there's a particular reason he was requesting this, though. There is an audio recording of my ex-husband in a drunken stupor where he was physically and emotionally abusing me. And I shared that audio recording with my attorney, and my attorney then shared that audio recording with his attorney, right? And I think that his attorney was doing everything possible to avoid that audio recording getting in front of the judge, because then she would be able to correlate the existing pattern of domestic violence, and whatever dodo bird, paramour, whatever you want to call her, decides to say or recant, it's hard for her to recant a statement or anything like that when there's also supporting evidence of something that I went through as well. So to me, that is the reason why the attorney was probably trying to avoid, you know, the whole trial, because we're going to play that audio as supporting evidence of me say, hey, I know his behavior and I've been through things, and here's something very tangible, and there's no neglecting that this is him. Like, it would have definitely tripped him up. So I think his attorney was very slick and smart for trying to approach things in this way. And the judge allowed it. And initially, at first, it was a more subdued approach. I took away some of the angst with a whole trial and swearing in. But then in the long run, it didn't help my portion of the case. It compromised it a little bit because the judge just didn't get to see like everything in the moment as we had prepared. But whatever. So there were negotiations back and forth. Like, I tell you, legit, we were in the courtroom. And then we, like me, when I say we, like myself, my line sister, my ex-husband, paramour, were on one side and I was on the other side, but we were like a hall sitting down. Me and Bestie were just kind of trying to distract ourselves from all the like anxiety around what's happening. But then when it came to like negotiations for everything that they couldn't agree upon, like they would have to come back to outside to talk to us and be like, okay, what do you think about this? They're proposing this. What do you think? Then they would go back to the judge and I would say yes or no. He would say yes or no. And then you'll continue on with all of the other things. So that took about roughly 4 hours or so. And there were a few things that my ex agreed to and others that he wouldn't budge on. So that then put us in a position to have to come back to court, right? So unfortunately, I think I made a mistake here because I should have just requested the full-on trial, especially if we were not going to be done with everything. But I think that his attorney and him were very strategic in this piece of making sure that they positioned themselves to not have to go to trial for this moment. And then what they did was agree to certain things and then reneged on that later. Okay. Yeah, it was a problem. The 50-50 schedule had not been memorialized yet, and I refused to agree to a 50-50 schedule until my ex-husband addressed the domestic violence and the anger management. For me, that was a do this first, and then we can explore that. I absolutely, again, believe that my son needs his time with his father. And the 50-50 schedule to me was like a big leap from having relatively no time for almost a year. Well, I say no time, like only had the Tuesdays, and then we graduated slowly but surely. But then to go from 50-50 and nothing had been like met with regards to the domestic violence or the anger management courses, like, you don't get to explore this 50-50 schedule and then you still have not addressed some of the asks or the things that will make me feel comfortable in behavior, right? So that was a problem. Good thing for him, or I don't know if it was a good thing, but the paramour never got to testify because it seemed that we negotiated everything that we wanted to, then we were not set to testify anything anymore, right? So she didn't testify, so her 4 hours of just sitting there was wasteful. We had about 2 more hearings, and then November came around, and then we had another in-person hearing November of 2023. So you think about July, August, September, October, November. So 4 months went by. We were back and forth, still waiting for him to provide all of his financials, still waiting for him to redline the allocation judgment some more, still waiting, still trying to mediate, still getting nowhere, still. Nothing was happening. So then we decided, okay, let's go. And then the other thing is that we were addressing a few other open items from the allocation judgment that we didn't quite agree upon yet or couldn't get, we kind of stuck on, right? The judge was like, all right, so we'll have another hearing. So we had another hearing in November of 2023. And for this hearing, we were definitely going to address the child support back pay because at this point it was just like, come on, man, light on, right? I'm thirsty. Give me 1 second. All right. So during this hearing, I did get some wins. It was a fairly decent hearing or whatever for me in some regard. I was able to get the travel with my son for the summers to Panama. What we agreed upon was like an every other year. We can get to spend the time in Panama for the summers. Got the school district, so I'm the primary residential parent. And there was something else that I got as well. But those were the things that I was like thumbs up I got as a win. And then we had to get to the child support, right? So now we're at the child support. The numbers are the numbers, right? So the numbers are the numbers. My ex could not avoid the child support numbers because it is what it is. So we finally got everything. Even to that day, he was still providing things in real time, like financials in real time. So the judge was like irritated because she's like, oh my God, you've had all of this time and you are just now giving us these financials, but whatever. Okay. Then he couldn't skate out of that. And the judge is like, yeah, you're going to have to pay her the back child support. My attorney and I said, well, we want it like all up front. And they were like, oh, no. And we were like, why not? I mean, we see the financials. He got the money in a bank. So why can he not pay everything up front? The reason why he gave as an excuse as to why he can't pay his child support or back child support to me up front is because he had a baby in the NICU. Yes, a baby in the NICU. Okay? And of course, it was Paramour's baby. Shocking news. Shocking. I was not aware of that. I will say I heard that maybe she was pregnant or whatever, but it never was confirmed to me. The other thing that really pisses me off about this, learning about this in this way, is that for maybe a couple of weeks or so, my son had been telling me, at this point he's 3, Mommy, I have a baby brother. He's in the hospital. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, thinking that he's just having an ideation and making things up. So he's like, no, mommy, I have a baby brother and he's in the hospital. And then one day I was at his daycare and I was like doting off of another baby, and it's one of his classmates' little brother. And I'm like, look at your little brother, how cute, da da da. And then my son was like, I have a little brother too. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But I didn't believe my baby because, you know, kids just kind of ramble and say things, and I'm just like, whatever. So my son had been telling me what was up, and I just could not put two and two together. And then there were like little rumblings, and the tea was out there in these streets, and I just was not privy to knowing the full details. So I was like, what? So the fact that he would bring this up in a way to avoid paying was like diabolical to me, like the nerve of you, right? So this man revealed that in court, and then things started to click in my mind, like, oh, no wonder she recanted. No wonder she's giving us a different story. Excuse me. And flipping the script. She brought these domestic violence allegations in October of 2022. And by January of 2023, she was already pregnant. So now it makes sense why he was moving in May of 2023. Because I'm just like, yo, you were just kicked out of her house, and here you are moving right back in. And I'm like, bruh, according to you, initially, he beat you, put his hands on you. Your daughter was scared of him, all these things. Now it makes sense. She was pregnant 2 months after this whole blow up of the domestic violence. And now she wants her man, baby daddy, whatever the hell he is to her, back in her house because she's going to need the help too. That made all the sense at that point. And I can't say that you don't understand where she was coming from, because when I was pregnant and I was going through the divorce and kind of whether or not we needed to go through with it and whatever, like, would always get my heartstrings pulled as to, oh my gosh, you know, family unit is breaking apart. I want our son to have their parents together. And as much as I knew how bad the situation between us was, that always was in the back of my mind, whether it was a good decision to be, you know, apart when I'm actively pregnant and about to have a child. So while I think she's still like a dodo bird for allowing that to happen, it makes sense why she decided to recant her whole story, because she was pregnant, right? So fast forward to now November of 2023, the baby was born at the end of October, and he's in the NICU. And this is the reason why this man does not want to pay me child support in full. So the nice thing that I appreciate is that the judge was like, I hear you. I'm sad that this happened. I hope the baby is okay. But sir, you've been making all this money and you're going to have to pay the child support. But we're not going to extend it out a year or whatever like you were trying to do. You're going to have to pay the child support in 4 months. And of course, that pissed him off, but it is what it is. She ruled what she ruled, and that was done. Okay? That was a win for me. Thumbs up. So the end of the day came to a close. I think like at some point the court was just like tired of the case and the back and forth. So there were hearings that, you know, in between back and forth as we worked out whatever parenting plan. He was paying me the back child support. And now it was just a matter of finalizing the allocation judgment. Like some of the things that I won from the allocation judgment were what they were, and we stamped on it, but we drafted them rather. They weren't entered in the court, but they were acknowledged. But because we couldn't agree on the care for my son and who would be alone with him and like that, then that caused a little bit of delay in the case. And then the court also had their stuff going on. Like they were severely backed up from a case log perspective. And it was just all this other stuff. So from July up until November, and then fast forward to now September of 2024, we had several hearings in between then, right? So now we are in the trial for September. And the paramour had to be subpoenaed again because now she has to testify. And the original trial that was supposed to happen in July of 2023 is now being reimagined in September of 2024. And my attorney was just like, we could have just had the trial in July of 2023. You would have been done. And to the fact that we have to be here again is ridiculous. Now, because of all of the nonsense, excuse me, and the in-between, I was asking for my fees. I was asking for my fees from July of 2023 up until that September 2024 hearing, because all of that time didn't need to happen. All of the in-between, all of the back and forth, all of that did not need to happen. And then he was actively trying to just avoid paying me certain things and, activities for my son that we were already agreed upon, swimming classes and all these things. And I'm just like, dude, let's get this done. But no, he was being difficult. So that was also up for debate when we got to the September 2024. So my attorney and his attorney are duking it out during the trial. One thing that really triggered me was, outside of Paramour's testimony, one thing that really triggered me is that my ex-husband tried to make it seem like my son did not want to spend time with me or be home with me. Like, he really tried to make it seem like, oh, our son doesn't want to talk to his mother and he doesn't want to see his mother. And I'm like, what? We had to even argue about just me getting phone calls with my son, because he would actively ignore my calls anytime I called to see my son or talk to him. Wouldn't answer the phone, wouldn't nothing. And by that time, we had been using the parenting app, and I was always documenting every phone call that I would make, and then when I would not be able to get connected. It was utterly ridiculous. And my son is only 3, so he was not in the position to call me himself or anything like that. So that was frustrating for me. And it was hurtful that I could not get in contact with my child just to say goodnight. Like, really? So 50-50 was problematic to me, because I knew that he was already trying to play these games and put these barriers in place to kind of mess with me and essentially prevent me from having contact with our son. So unfortunately, that was something that I had to fight in court as well, which was so ridiculous. And of course, then it came to the paramour's testimony, and she was just like, oh, he's a great father. The drug use, I just said these things to make her angry. Same thing. She allegedly lied, according to her, that she lied about everything because she was mad that she found out he was cheating and all of these things. And she painted herself to be like this amazing stepmom. And I'm like, girl, relax. This is my child, okay? Not yours. This is his child, my child. We're not doing this. But that was extremely triggering. I knew that she was going to lie. I knew that she was going to recant. At this point, they have a whole baby together. So, okay, expected. But the performative antics in between, Lord have mercy, it was a lot. So I think one would argue that I should have let things go, after the trial, right? And I disagree with that. I think most people would have been over the fight. We know them prolonging this and them they were doing everything to stretch this out to make me tap out, financially tap out, emotionally tap out, all the things. And I just refused to back down. Your girl was not backing down. So I'm grateful for that type of fight in me, because at the very least, my concerns, they were never left on the table. And no matter what the outcome was, at least everything got in front of the judge. So in that regard, as much as it was so emotionally, financially, and physically taxing sometimes, I'm glad that I just didn't back down. And there was also a just lack of trust. There was clear lack of trust on all ends. I definitely didn't trust my ex-husband. Definitely don't trust her. And my thing is, even if my son was to be left alone with her, if anything were to happen to my child, you think that I can count on her telling me the truth? Knowing that I'm willing to go to court and knowing that I will take all the steps to make sure that I get to the bottom line of what the hell happened. I knew for sure that none of this was going to work in my favor as it relates to my child and me being in the know, right? The lack of trust was a big problem, but there's really nothing I can do about this. At this point, He lived in her house again. They have a child. That child is also my son's brother. So what am I supposed to do? It's something that I had to swallow, but it really, to this day, makes me uncomfortable because I know that if my child was to get harmed, I won't get the truth. Anything he fall down the stairs, anything, God forbid that anything were to happen to him, I will not get the truth. And that bothers me. But again, nothing I can really do about that. You know, because they were trying to paint me as this angry ex-wife or whatever, I was just like, what we not gonna do is pretend as if I just got here because I wanted to be spiteful. No, we are in court because this woman decided to bring these allegations to me in detail with pictures and text messages. And all of these allegations cannot be ignored. On top of that, my own experience with him validates what she shared with me. So yeah, no, we're not here because I'm just angry that he and I got divorced and now he's with the mistress. No. This ain't that. So I wanted the judge to see all the sequence of events that led me here because I was not going to allow for anybody to paint me in a way that, oh, I'm just a bitter ex-wife. No, because there was nothing bitter about our parenting situation until she came to me with these allegations. Nothing. We was good for the most part. So that kind of concludes the case. Everything up on that after that, you know, was the legalities of formally entering the allocation judgment in the court, and making sure that, you know, everything agreed upon by the judge was in writing. The other part to this was that, oh, I won my fees. I almost forgot. So I won a partial payment of my court fees. The judge did agree that there was delay and there were games being played from the trial that was supposed to happen in 2023 up until that moment that we were in court in September of 2024. So he was responsible to pay me a decent amount of my fees back. It did not cover everything that I spent on the case at all. It just was a very small fraction of it. But at the very least, I can pay my attorney back, or pay my attorney with the remaining fees that he owes me back. And then I'm not more in the red of, you know, what this situation put me in. So that was a big win for me. And I'm glad that I decided to go after that because it worked in my favor. So I got my fees and I'm very happy about that. Yeah, this is where we're going to stop. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel. Thank you for joining Dina J from around the way. This has been super cathartic to kind of talk through these things. Yeah, I went through a lot. And what I will do is, I promise I'll share some tips or things that you can do to make sure that you can successfully win your custody battle. And there are other things that I wish I knew before I entered into court that I'll share as well. So those 2 videos or so, along with the allocation judgment video, are to come. And yeah, the playlist is also there available for you to see if you'd like to go back and kind of get well acquainted with the nuances of my case as well. So thank you for joining me. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And there you can see all my social media handles. And I will catch you next time, okay? Hasta luego, amigos.